Oh my goodness. How do we know what to expect on Saturday when Auburn heads to Missouri?
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters. I'm John Miller, the host of the Locked On Mizzou podcast, and joining me for a special crossover edition, it is Zach Blackerby of Locked On Auburn. We're going to have an absolute blast on today's program, including some final score predictions, all kinds of good stuff from us. Going to talk about the case for the Tigers. Of course, I mean the Auburn Tigers in this case. Before we start, though, I do want to remind you today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. You know what, Zach, I got to get started with a confession. I said on yesterday's Locked On Mizzou that I thought it would be irresponsible to pick the Auburn Tigers straight up on the road. Now, if it were in Auburn, I'd totally get it. I just think on the road, this team, do they seem professional enough to be able to travel and get it done? Coming off a bye week, I'll give you that. What's the case for Auburn in your opinion? And
yeah, I think the case for Auburn is if they want to ride, I think the best rusher in the SEC, that is Jarquez Hunter. Like I think the offense cleans itself up a ton. John, something I talked about pretty consistently throughout the offseason was Auburn, from a roster standpoint, did everything they could do to make the offense not about Payton Thorne, yet the way the offense is run, it's been a lot about the quarterback. It's been a lot about Payton Thorne, and that's resulted in some inconsistency. Auburn has found a way to trip itself up in every major game that it's played so far this season. And so, like, to your credit, how can you pick them to not do that when they've done it against every, Power 4 team that they've played so far this season? But law of averages at some point, right? Like they've got, I guess the case for Auburn is if they put it all together coming after a bye week and play like to the level that they're supposed to, I do think Auburn can beat Missouri.
I definitely think Auburn can beat Missouri too, without a doubt. I mean, the Tigers, the Auburn Tigers, that is, have some talent, especially on the offensive side of the ball. What do you think about their defense, though? I am curious there. What do you think about the talent there? Because it seems like all the talk about, well, Auburn has talent, it seems like it's more talked about on the offensive side of the ball. What about defense?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's similar in the sense of Auburn has talent on this roster. It's all just so young. It's so young. And we've seen Auburn play more and more freshmen over the course of the season. And after a bye week, I'm expecting them to play even more, John. Guys, Missouri folks need to look out for these following freshmen on the defensive side of the ball. Malik Blockton plays defensive line. DeMarcus Riddick, listed as a linebacker. They play him at edge a good bit as well. They play him more at edge than linebacker, but we may see him at linebacker some on Saturday. Caleb Harris is he's a former 3-star safety. He was like the last add in this class, and he has been nothing short of exceptional. And then Jay Crawford at corner. Those freshmen on the defensive side of the ball have been nothing short of remarkable so far this season. And they've kind of eased them in more and more. I can't wait to see if they put Crawford on Luther Saturday. I want to see it. I want to see him tested to see, okay, what can this kid do? Because so far, he's been exceptional every step of the way.
Has Crawford played exclusively on the outside, or has he played on the inside some too?
Yeah, I mean, he's pretty much exclusively been an outside corner.
So that'd be the curious part for me, because I could definitely see him shadowing Burden on the outside, but typically Burden plays more in the slot. So that would be interesting. It really would be. I just would maybe question if they'd trust the true freshman with kind of a little bit of a different skill change there, I would say. What do you think about that? I mean, he's been impressive, though.
He has been, and I think it would kind of signify like, oh, this is what this staff really thinks of him. They must think the world of him to ask him to do that. So I do think that's going to be intriguing. Kayan Lee is a corner who, he's a true sophomore. And I thought last year he was exceptional as a true freshman. He was kind of my pick to be, the breakout player on the defensive side of the ball in the SEC. And he started off the season pretty strong, but the last 2 or 3 weeks, John, he's been pretty tough. So I want to see him return to form. Could a bye week help a guy like that possibly kind of get his feet up under him and, prep for this game, kind of giving him extra time? I don't know. But yeah, those corners, I'm really interested to see how they match up with Missouri.
So yesterday on my program, I actually spent a little bit of time, maybe too much time, some would argue, but no, seriously, on a 4th and 1 play by Auburn against Georgia. They were going for it. No actual traditional turnovers for Auburn in that game, but a turnover on downs there in that position. Boy, Hugh Freeze got on his quarterback like you rarely see a head coach get on his quarterback, at least in public on the sidelines. What was the kerfuffle there on that particular play?
Yeah, the Auburn fans driving in their car or watching on YouTube, a few of them just drove off the road because they're just so frustrated and done with this topic. But it was a big topic throughout Auburn's bye week, John. According to Hugh Freeze after the game, he said publicly at his post-game presser that it was supposed to be just a dive to the left to Jarquez Hunter, which makes sense. 4th and short. You've been able to run the football effectively. Give it to Jarquez Hunter. You don't have to score. And somehow lost in translation, like you see Payton Thorne clearly like check to something. Well, then Payton Thorne on a radio interview a few days later was asked about it, and he said he didn't check into anything. And so it's kind of created a lot of discussion, controversy. But all in all, like it kind of signifies, John, what we were talking about earlier, how Auburn keeps finding ways to trip over itself. When there's any sort of pressure or any sort of extra weight on a play, Auburn doesn't execute. The lack of composure on both sides of the football, it could be a 3rd and 20, and they'll find a way to either allow them to convert it or on the defensive side of the ball. Then obviously in 3rd and shorts or 4th and shorts, when Auburn has the football, they don't tend to convert. So this is just a team, when there's any sort of pressure or any sort of ability to say, okay, I'm ready to be clutch, I'm ready to execute in a key situation, something happens. And most of the time it's self-inflicted. It's not like they're losing one-on-one battles. I don't know if they're overthinking it or if they don't feel prepared or what. It could be a little bit of all of it. But that 4th and 1 against Georgia that you're talking about, it kind of signified all of that. It's almost symbolic in a way.
Yeah, I thought it was a pretty good encapsulation of the Auburn season so far in some ways. It really was. And,
like so close, and it's there. You just make it a little more difficult on yourself, and then you don't get it. I think that's kind of what the season's been for Auburn.
Sure. And in some ways, I think it's understandable. You're on the road in Georgia, a tough place to play. Yeah. If you get your wires crossed a little bit, maybe the quarterback checked into something he shouldn't have checked into. That part's understandable. That happens every week in college football. The part where it then carries over into the next week and there's like public squabbling between the quarterback and the head coach, that's why it's tough for me to then go, yep, let's take these guys on the road in Columbia. Missouri has its own problems, to be certain, but that one, that would really give me a lot of pause just from the outside looking in.
I get it. Yeah, and if you're on the Auburn side of it, it's like you're so close. Can you just put it all together? And I think the thing I'm watching for this is, do they change what they're doing offensively? Hugh Freeze on Monday said Jarquez Hunter is going to be a larger part of the offense. If that's the case, and Auburn tries to do what Texas A&M did to Missouri a few weeks ago, I like Auburn's chances. I'm not sold that they're going to make that pivot offensively from a scheme point of view. I just can't see the staff switching identities at this point in the season, John.
Yeah, halfway through it is difficult to see that for sure. Well, coming up on the program, I do want to talk more about all the types of adjustments we could see. What does Zach want to ask me about how Missouri is going to attack Auburn coming up here this weekend? First, though, let's talk about a FanDuel, because NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So when you get a hunch during the middle of a ball game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the exact same page where you place your bets. And you can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. And you know what? The Missouri-Auburn line shrinking a little bit in Auburn's favor. So you know what, Zach? Maybe Vegas, maybe our friends at FanDuel are agreeing with you a little bit more than me right now. 4.5. I think it opened about 6 or so. So we're moving down a little bit. Total's 51.5. I think Zach and I both are leaning toward the over in that one. We'll talk about that a little bit more in just a second. But regardless of what your opinions are, what kind of action you're looking for, you got to find it at FanDuel.com. All right, we're back on the program here. And Zach, I feel like as I mess up my graphic here, there we go. You know, I feel like I've hogged the spotlight here so far. Why don't you flip the script on me and ask me some Missouri questions?
My first question is, why is an SEC team traveling to UMass? What's up with that?
You'd have to ask a couple of athletic directors ago. Jim Sturck had this thing of, well, let's schedule out as far as possible. And yeah, I don't know. What? This was maybe at a time when Missouri was, I don't have a great answer for you is the honest truth of that, but you know what?
That's okay.
We got through it. We won. It's all good.
Yeah, I guess so. So this Missouri offense, I mean, it hasn't been kind of what a lot of people thought, myself included. I thought Missouri would be a lot better offensively to this point of the season than they have been. Is that for any like obvious reason? I mean, what do you attribute that to?
Well, I think number one, I think Brady Cook simply hasn't been quite as good this year. And I think a lot of it, you look at his numbers under pressure, and he's been kind of a disaster under pressure so far this season, just in simple yards per attempt. That's just a statistical reality at this point. And Missouri has given up a little bit too much pressure. I think the left side of their offensive line, which was a pretty good strength last year, I would say, has been a question mark so far. 2 transfers from outside of the program. Caden Green in particular from Oklahoma, that caused a lot of consternation among Sooner fans. Well, he actually split reps. Maybe Mitchell Walters even got more of the reps with the first team last week against UMass. So Missouri kind of signaling, hey, we'll give you your NIL, but that doesn't necessarily guarantee you any playing time over the long term here. So that part is, I guess, good news, but the bad news is that was an important player that you wanted to be sort of a bedrock for your offensive line, and so far that hasn't really been the case. So I think that's a big part of it. I also think offensively, I think Missouri thought that they had one of the best receiving groups in the country. I think their 1 and 2 is still fantastic. Burden and Theo Weiss have been really good. I think their number 3, though, their number 4s, Marquise Johnson's had a little bit of an ankle injury. Maybe Mookie Cooper hasn't been as good as people expected. Maybe Josh Manning's a little bit too young. I'd like to see a little bit more Manning, but I think that's a pretty good summation of the offense so far.
The first thing you mentioned, as far as pressure being allowed, is that a matchup you feel confident about, the Missouri offensive line versus the pass rush at Auburn? What are your thoughts on that?
Not particularly. I don't feel particularly confident about that. I don't have a strong take on Auburn's pass rush per se. It's hard for me to feel overly confident about Missouri's pass protection against anybody right now. I think the run blocking has been pretty good for the most part. And again, really Missouri's offense has moved the chains pretty consistently and protected the ball, save the Texas A&M game. But for the most part, the Tigers just need to finish more drives with touchdowns instead of field goals, and suddenly it's going to look a lot better. Whether they can do that or not, well, that'll maybe tell the tale of the second half of the season.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to figure out how good Auburn's defense is. I mean, against some of these teams that they played earlier this season, I'm going to take the Georgia game out of it just because, I mean, I think Georgia's the top 3, 4, 5 team in the country. But like you look at what they did against Oklahoma, you look at what they did against Cal, you look at what they did against these teams where Auburn's offense was turning the football over and they were on the field a ton. Like statistically, they're pretty decent and they were kind of fighting an uphill battle. I'm excited to see them play against Missouri. I think Missouri's a good team. I think their offense, though it's been not to the level that we thought it could be entering the season, I still think it's formidable and could pop at any point. They've got the star power for it to pop. I'm excited about this matchup, John. I'm excited about the matchup of the Auburn's defense, all elements of it, whether it's the corners that we talked about or the pass rush, what they do to attack Cook and Burton and the rest of this Missouri offense. To me, I think that's going to decide this thing.
Yeah, it very well could. There's no doubt that the Missouri offense and the Missouri defense have been a mixed bag so far, for sure. So again, especially against the best competition, which has been Texas A&M so far, it's just hard to know which Missouri team is real, especially the Missouri defense, because the Tigers have been dominant in half of their games against lower class competition. They've given up 3 points in those 3 games. Well, those other 3 games against high major competition, a totally different story. They haven't been necessarily bad like they were against A&M, but haven't been particularly impressive either. I'd say average at best.
Yeah. I think Auburn's going to be able to score against this Missouri defense, regardless of if it's through them running the football more like Hugh Freeze hinted at with Jarquez Hunter, or just Payton Thorne being more comfortable in this offense. And he's done a better job of taking care of the football over the last 2 weeks, with the exception of the pick 6 against Oklahoma. That was brutal. But he does seem more comfortable in the offense now than he did a month ago. Is that enough? I don't know. I have no clue. But I do think Auburn is going to be able to score in this. And so if the defense comes out with a game plan after a bye week, I mean, I think that's it. If Auburn's pulling the upset, I think it's because the defense leans over their skis a little bit.
Yeah, that makes sense to me, and I tend to agree with you just on both sides. I think both teams will probably be able to move the football. That's just kind of the way I'm looking at it. I'm curious what is the rest? I know Keandre Lambert-Smith is a heck of a player for Auburn.
It's been great. Yep.
I think if you're Missouri, I'd like to see Drayden Norwood be on him as much as possible. The rest of the Missouri corners, especially Toriano Pride, has been burnt quite a few times this season. What about the rest of that receiving unit? Who's like the one guy I need to worry about?
Yeah. I talked about this with one of my guests earlier this week. Daryl Dapprich came on and talked about this, but Rivaldo Fairweather, very athletic tight end. He was Auburn's leading pass catcher a year ago. He's been kind of quiet at times, and it does seem like the middle of the field has been one of the weaknesses for Missouri as far as defending the pass. Would you agree with that?
You know, that's a good question.
Okay.
It doesn't strike me as something. I know Missouri's offense totally avoids the middle of the field. That's been a very obvious thing in terms of passing.
But if that's the case, Rivaldo Fairweather, the tight end, I think is a name to watch. Cam Coleman, he's the freshman phenom. You know, he's underachieved a little bit so far this year. I think he's kind of a guy who could benefit from the bye week because I think he was a little banged up. He missed a game earlier this year. So, Cam Coleman could be a part of this. Malcolm Simmons, another true freshman wide receiver. I think we'll see some. He's going to be kind of more of your left to right type of guy. They put him in motion a lot, or they kind of use him as the perimeter of the field. He can stretch the field too. He's had a long touchdown as well, but Malcolm Simmons, Cam Coleman, Rivaldo Fairweather. I think those are kind of the guys that could get it done through the air if it's not Keandre Lambert-Smith.
Man, Rivaldo Fairweather.
What a name.
What a name. How that should be on the Key and Peele sketch for sure.
And he's good.
Amazing. And he's good. Yeah.
And he's actually good. I think he's got a chance to be a Sunday level player. He's so athletic. I don't know if we're fully using him correctly, if I'm being honest. But yeah, Keandre Lambert-Smith, I mean, just for context, this is a guy who entered the portal after after spring practice. He was at Penn State, and he was one of the more sought after receivers in the portal. And he's on pace to have one of the best receiving seasons for an Auburn Tiger ever. And so, you kind of wonder, Auburn hasn't had a 1,000-yard receiver in 20 years. It's insane. And there's kind of some pressure to that. Is there any kind of way, does it help Hugh Freeze from a recruiting standpoint if he can point to a guy having a 1,000-yard season? I think it does. So is there extra pressure to get the ball to him in this game plan? Possibly. Something to monitor.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm actually interested to hear about your general thoughts on Hugh Freeze here coming up in the show in a little bit. And of course, we're going to do our final scores, maybe some more predictions as well. But Zach, I know you got some business to take care of.
Yes, today's show is brought to you by our friends at Hims. Hims is changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. The process is 100% online, so there's no need for uncomfortable doctor's visits. You can start your free online visits today at hims.com/lockedon. That is HIMS.com/lockedon for all of your personal ED treatment options. hims.com/lockedon. The products mentioned are chewable compounded products, which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan.
All right, we are back on this crossover edition of Locked On Mizzou and Locked On Auburn. You know, Zach, I'm really curious, halfway through year 2, right? I do have that right with Hugh Freeze. How are you feeling just in general about the beginning to this era?
Yeah, I mean, you love the talent that they've been able to accumulate and acquire. Culturally, I don't think he has his fingerprint fully on it quite yet. I mentioned this presser from earlier in the week a few times, but he was talking about these young guys. You know, a young guy typically has 4 or 5 guys that are older in the locker room that they need to look at. It's like, we don't have those guys for him to look at yet. So kind of called out some of his older veteran leadership there. And so it's just going to take time. He's building it the right way. We've seen other programs try to go after these portal guys to build the core of the roster, not to kind of add pieces to the roster. And it hasn't worked yet. All of the top programs have done it through the high school ranks, and then they add pieces through the portal when they need to. And I think he's doing it the right way. It takes time. It takes time. And today's society and the pressure of college football, like, you don't want to wait, but I do think he's doing it the right way. So that's been encouraging. That's been encouraging to see. As far as a score prediction, John, where are you leaning with this one?
You know, I'm leaning Missouri. I'm leaning toward a relatively high-scoring ball game. I'm not confident enough in Missouri to say that they're definitely going to cover the spread and blow out Auburn or anything like that.
Sure.
But then on the other side, I just, after what I've seen from Auburn, I just can't really trust them on the road. I really think that home field is going to be a big factor here. If this were Jordan-Hare Stadium, I'd probably be leaning Auburn. But in this game, I'm going to go Missouri 31, Auburn 28.
Yeah, I think we're pretty close. I'm going to say 34-27 Missouri. And I'm going to predict that Auburn either has a lead or it's tied or it's really, really close in the fourth quarter. And then Auburn does something and gives it up. Whether it's a turnover, whether it's something self-inflicted, or Missouri takes advantage of a situation. That's the way the Oklahoma game went. I predicted that it happened in the Oklahoma game. I kind of feel like the same thing. I don't think Missouri is like inherently more talented than Auburn from a roster standpoint.
Sure.
But I do think Missouri, the way they've played so far this season, they're a better team. And I think they're a better coached team right now than what Auburn has.
That's exactly my take. I think if you look at, the individual players, I mean, Luther Burden's probably the best player on the field, but other than that, I think the talent overall, again, player for player, I agree with you. Team-wise, I think, or maybe I at least hope, that Missouri is further along here, year 5 under Drinkwitz. Texas A&M game aside, hopefully the Tigers are ready to play here. This is a really important game, but to be honest, the way the Tigers have performed so far, the Missouri Tigers, that is, and the Auburn Tigers for that matter, I'm ready for just about anything in this game. I have no confidence in my predictions.
Yeah, I did a radio hit earlier this week, and they're like, what can we expect on Saturday? And I'm like, if somebody tells you what's going to happen on Saturday, they are lying to you.
Yeah, with any degree of confidence,
Yeah, there's just no way you can know. It's interesting because it does feel like whoever loses this game, their season's going to spiral, just because I think the expectations of the program are in 2 different places. Like, Missouri seemed to be in a shot. They had a shot at the college football playoff entering the season. Auburn, they wanted to go, 7-5, 8-4. That's probably not going to happen at this point. But, a win on Saturday saves Auburn's season in the sense of, you still got a chance to go to a bowl game.
True.
You still got a chance to, keep the fan base in it. It's kind of been a lull. I mean, them getting blasted by Georgia, then the bye week, like, there's not a whole lot of excitement around it right now, just because, nothing's happened. Nothing's happened in 2 weeks up to this point. So I think that's going to be a big thing for this coaching staff. We'll see if they can pull it off. But you can probably say the same thing about Missouri, right? Like if they want to keep the playoff hopes alive, like you can't lose this game.
Yeah, technically you could if you beat Alabama the next week in Tuscaloosa, but what are the odds of that happening? Pretty low if you lose to Auburn, you got to think. But obviously anything's possible. But
we'll be pulling for y'all.
Well, sure, absolutely. But no, the fan base, yeah, technically, yes, Missouri would still be alive. The fan base would feel like it's over for sure. That might be dramatic, but they'd probably also have a point. This is an enormously important game for Missouri, not only for this season, but because this season in particular, I think is enormously important for Missouri. The Tigers as a program, as everything, they put all their resources into the portal, trying to shore up as many spots on this roster that they felt like they needed to the point where, well, really there are more guys starting from the portal, at least in the last, not necessarily from this past class, but just the past 2 or 3 cycles, than there are who are high school guys who were recruited by Eli Drinkwitz in Missouri. So it's an interesting note there. How tight together is this locker room? Always a question in the portal era. Yeah, I think this couldn't be a bigger game for Missouri. They win this. They don't even necessarily have to beat Alabama or anything. You just got to win this game, start feeling better about yourself, and getting the season going in the right direction.
Yeah. And so we both picked Missouri to win a 1-score game. Hopefully, it's entertaining.
I'm stunned. I thought you were going to pick Auburn for sure.
I can point to things to say if this happens, Auburn will win, but I'm not quite ready to predict that they will happen. But if they come out and take care of the football and run it, and the defensive game plan is solid, I do think they'll win. But I'm just not predicting all of those things to happen.
I think that's a very measured and scholarly approach, and I agree with you, sir.
All right. So, for all the Auburn fans watching, John, if folks want to kind of get the Missouri perspective, where can they find you?
Well, they can hit me up on YouTube, of course, wherever you get audio podcasts, Locked On Mizzou, and of course everywhere on social media at Locked On Mizzou as well. And for all my Missouri fans out there, I know they probably want more inside intel. You got to check out Locked On Auburn with Zach.
Yep, wherever you get your podcast, absolutely. John, best of luck on Saturday. We'll talk to you soon. All right, that was fun. Please like the video. Please subscribe. We'll see you next time. This has been Locked On Auburn.